Praise be to you, Yahuwah my Elohim. Praise be to your Son, Yahushua my Messiah. I come at your feet in the name of your Son. Thank you for the knowledge you pour unto me, and thank you for breaking all the shackle that was bound on my face. Yahuwah, you are the only true living God. Thank you for your Yahushua, whom you truly love. You are Elohim, the Elohim of the Yahudim.
Shalom, family. I am your brother Pierre Lidji, and you're listening to The Remnant Awakens. I'm glad you're here with me today, because we're about to go way back, like all the way back to the beginning. I mean, before there was any talk of nations or borders, or even the word race as we know it. We're talking about the sons of Noah, for those who grew up on the English side of things. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Every single nation on this earth, every people group, every tongue, they all trace back to these three brothers. But, the world's done a real number on us, hiding the truth of who these descendants became. It's like you grow up hearing one thing in school, then you open the scriptures, and it's a whole different story. So today, we're going to restore some of that truth. We're going to dig into the real table of nations. And by the end, I hope you see yourself in this story, because you are in it, whether you know it or not. All right, let's get into it. Genesis chapter 10, sometimes called the Table of Nations, is one of those chapters people like to skip over, because it's just a bunch of names, right? But man, those names are everything. After the flood, Yahuwah, the Most High himself, he repopulated the whole earth through Noah's three sons. That's the foundation. You got Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and from them, all the nations spread out. Now, I know some folks get lost in the genealogy, but if you really look, you'll see the blueprint for the world as we know it. And, as we talked about in previous episodes, the world's been busy rewriting this blueprint, swapping out names, erasing identities, and just straight up lying about who's who. But the word doesn't change. So, let's break it down, one line at a time, and see where everybody fits in. Let's start with Japheth. Genesis chapter 10, verse 2 to 5 lays it out. Japheth had sons, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Now, these names might sound ancient, but they're the roots of what we call the European and Eurasian peoples today. Gomer, for example, is linked to the Cimmerians, who moved into what's now Europe. Magog, you hear that name pop up in prophecy, but historically, it's tied to the Scythians, up in the north. Madai, that's the Medes, think Iran, that region. Yavan, that's Greece. Tubal and Meshech, you see those names in old maps of Russia and Turkey. Tiras, some say that's the Thracians, over in the Balkans. So, when you look at the modern nations, Europe, Russia, parts of the Middle East, even some of the islands, they all trace back to Japheth. And it's wild because the world tries to lump everybody together. But the scriptures are specific. Japheth's line is not the line of the covenant, but they play a big role in the world story, especially when you look at how power shifted over time. And just like we talked about in that episode on the 1948 deception, a lot of these Japheth nations have tried to claim an identity that's not theirs. But we'll get to that. Now, let's talk about Ham. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6 to 20. Ham had sons, Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. This is where it gets real, because these names are still with us, just hidden under different labels. Cush, that's Ethiopia and parts of Sudan. Mitzrayim, that's Egypt. Straight up, no debate. Put, that's Libya, and some say parts of North Africa. And Canaan, well, that's the land that became Israel and Palestine. But originally, it was Canaanite territory. So, the African nations, the Canaanites, all come from Ham. But here's where the deception comes in. The world tries to say that all black people are Hamites, and that's just not true. We talked about this in the episode on the Hebrews turning white. Skin color doesn't tell the whole story. The Hamites are a specific group, and the scriptures are clear about who they are. The Canaanites, for example, were the ones who got displaced when Yashar'el came into the land. And, the curse of Canaan gets twisted all the time to justify all kinds of evil. But that's not what the word says. So when you look at Africa today, you see the legacy of Ham, but you also see a lot of mixing, a lot of lost identity. And that's by design. All right, now we get to Shem. Genesis chapter 10, verse 21 to 31. Shem had sons, Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. This is the line of the covenant, the Semitic nations. Elam, that's Persia, or modern-day Iran. Ashur, that's Assyria. Arphaxad. Now that's the one you want to pay attention to, because from Arphaxad comes Eber, and from Eber comes Avraham. That's the root of the Hebrews, the people of the covenant. Lud, that's Lydia, over in Turkey. Aram, that's Syria. So when you hear Semitic, it's not just about language, it's about lineage. The Hebrews, the true Yashar'el, come from Shem. And, as we've been saying in this series, the world tried to erase this connection to make the Hebrews look like something they're not. But the scriptures don't lie. The covenant, the promises, the Mashiach, they all come through Shem. And I always get a little fired up here because this is personal. My own family, my own story, it's right here in this line. And if you're listening and you feel that tug, that's not an accident. The remnant is waking up, and it's time to know who you are. Now, let's bring it closer to home. Who built America? Really, who built it? The history books will tell you all kinds of things. Because, let's be honest, history was written by the victors, right? But let's be real. It wasn't the Hamites and it wasn't the Canaanites. It was the Yahudim, the true Hebrews, who were captured on the coasts of West Africa. My people, your people. They were targeted, rounded up, enslaved, shipped across the Atlantic, and some were forced to build the wealth and infrastructure of America. And, this isn't just about physical labor. It's about identity theft. The world took the Hebrews, stripped them of their names, their language, their culture, and then told them they were something else. That's why when you look at the descendants of slaves in America, you're looking at one of the 12 tribes of Yashar'el. And, man, I know that's heavy, but it's the truth. We talked about this in the episode on the 1948 deception, and again when we broke down the Ashkenazi myth. The real Hebrews didn't disappear. They were scattered, just like the word said they would be. But now the remnant is waking up, and that's why we're here. So, family, here's the bottom line. Hasatan, through this world, has lied to us about race, about origins, about identity. But the word of Yahuwah, family, it restores truth. It brings us back to who we really are. And I know Some of this might be new, or maybe it's just confirming what you already felt in your spirit. Either way, don't let the world define you. Let the Most High define you. And that's it for today, family. I'm Pierre Ligi, your brother from the tribe of Yehuda, and this is The Remnant Awakens. If this stirred your spirit, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your bell notification. Comment what stood out to you the most. And if someone is still sleeping, send this to them. Until next time, shalom. See you all on the next episode.
Praise be to you, Yahuwah my Elohim. Praise be to your Son, Yahushua my Messiah. I come at your feet in the name of your Son. Thank you for the knowledge you pour onto me, and thank you for breaking out the shackle that was bound on my face. Yahuwah, you are the only true living God. Indeed. Thank you for your Yahusha, whom you truly love. You are Elohim, the Elohim.